Good morning. Welcome to the Haywood County Board of Commissioners meeting for November 2nd, 2015. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. If everyone would please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to live in this fine county. Lord, we thank you for the rain. Thank you for what it does to our water supply and our crops. Dear Lord, just be with us this morning as commissioners and as the public to draw upon the wisdom and guidance that you provide us and to help us to make the best decisions that we can for this. In your name we ask this prayer. Amen.
Thank you. At this point, I'll open a public hearing. It's a second public hearing concerning local development and economic development incentives pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 158-7.1D. Fee simple conveyance of 3 parcels totaling 55.8 acres at the Beaver Dam Industrial Park to Regional Recycling Solutions by private negotiation. So I'll open the public hearing at this point and call on Ira Dove, the county manager.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Ira.
Commissioners, members of the public. At the last meeting, you requested that the videotape be reviewed and that as many of the questions as we could find answers to be answered. With that stated, this is the work that we came up with to answer as many of the questions as possible. I'm going to go to one of the ones that was repeated out of the gate. Has to do with tax incentives. There was a question as to whether or not this particular facility would be eligible for a complete tax exemption. The answer is that recycling facilities are entitled to a local tax exemption. That would cover the equipment, the building, the property, the exact footprint of the building property. That stated, I'm now going to apologize to you and to the members of the public for putting up a slide that showed that taxes would be collected on the equipment in the building. We had further discussions on this matter, and Regional Recycling Solutions has placed an alternative offer to forego any additional tax incentives and pay full price for the property as we had set it at $780,000. This tax incentive is related to the fact that the Division of Environmental Quality in the General Assembly put these incentives in place. Recycling employment grew by 5% during the recent recession and continues to grow. It was one of the few industries that did grow during the recession, as evidenced by the record of 17,000 private recycling jobs in North Carolina, and that's from the Director of Recycling in an opinion letter in the News and Observer. Quick revamp on the history of the Beaver Dam Industrial Park. County purchased the land from the Green Land Company in 1993. Elshin, one of the companies out there, purchased 40 acres. Roltec purchased 3 acres in 98. We bought 16 additional acres. The county did in 1999. 9 homes were built adjacent to the Beaver Dam Industrial Park, Green Mountain Estates from 2003 to 2006. Plus Cleaners purchased a site in 2005. And the property that we are discussing has been graded since 2008. One of the questions that was repeated several times was how will traffic impact the Beaver Dam community? We contacted the North Carolina Department, our planning director contacted the North Carolina Department of Transportation and looked at the different road capacities out there. The Freedom Drive and Newfound Road has about 3,500 people on that with a daily, average daily, with a capacity of 12,000. And they assume, to my knowledge, 30% of this will be truck vehicles. So you could drop 1,000 trucks on that road without overburdening the capacity. The capacity of the Beaver Dam Road itself, there's about 2,400 people that use that. And again, it also has a 12,000 daily vehicle capacity. These roads are well underutilized by DOT standards. The interesting thing that we discovered in this is the I-40 corridor. I-40 going through that section does have a capacity of about 58,000, and there are about 50,000 vehicles that use I-40 at the present time. But as far as traffic on those two roads that were mentioned, there's tremendous amount for capacity there, according to DOT. Again, 50,000 vehicles travel I-40. If 50 vehicles were increased, that would be 1/10% in an average daily traffic count. If 2,400 vehicles use the Beaver Dam Road daily, if 50 vehicles, for every 50 vehicles, you're increasing traffic by about 2%. We got questions about diesel commercial vehicles, and we don't want particularly diesels there for the environmental impact. What we learned was that there have been a lot of changes in standards for the diesels over the past 15 years. Two big points in time, 2007 and 2010, saw major reductions in the amount of emissions from the diesels and major changes in strict emission standards put in place to result in they were looking at particulate matter and trying to reduce the particulates of the mononitrogen oxides as close to zero as possible. That was the goal, and this is nationwide. One of the things we learned in this, though, is that if people are really concerned, as winter comes on, people are going to want to idle vehicles, diesel or otherwise, and the idling of vehicles is what we learned really causes a lot of problems, just in our research. By the by, if there are 3,500 vehicles using these roads up there, if they would not idle this winter, that would do much more than this truck traffic in terms of reducing emissions. Or if these trucks, whatever trucks were in there, if they didn't spend a lot of time idling, it would help. This is from the research, this slide comes out of one of the government websites that we found, and we cut and pasted it exactly. What we're talking about with the NOx is mononitrogen oxides, which would include nitric oxide and nitrogen dioxide. These are the hazardous chemicals that people would be worried about. The PM stands for particulate matter, and we're talking about how much pollutant is basically made per brake horsepower hour. That's how it's measured in diesel. And if you look at the old emission standards from 1988, you would have had in the nitrous oxide column, or the mononitrogen oxides column, you would have had about 12 to 13 grams per brake horsepower hour, and that has been reduced to near the zero mark. And if you look at the particulate matter produced back in 1988, that would have been close to 8 grams, and that is reduced down to near the zero mark now under the new emission standards. So this has to do with the design of the trucks and the emissions of the trucks themselves. These standards have been in place. Like I say, they had some major changes in 2007 and 2010. This is what we were able to discover on that point. Rough Creek watershed. Got some questions about the impact on the Rough Creek watershed. We actually contacted a senior geologist at the State Division, and we contacted Mark Pruitt locally. There's a mile and a half It's up 1.5 miles at a 410-foot grade, the Rough Creek watershed. And the reason I put this after the diesel particulate slide is to show that, you know, theoretically, you're not really going to have a problem if those are newer diesels. And looking at the Rough Creek watershed, and there's really no reasonable way, unless you were to build a conduit and a pumping station 1.5 miles up that hill, that you're going to impact that water. There's no reasonable way to conclude that runoff from the industrial park is going to affect or has affected the Rough Creek watershed, because it's 410 feet up a grade, 1.5 miles away. Environmental impact. Property will be prohibited by permit and deed restriction from incineration or gasification of waste. This is one of the questions that keeps coming up. There will not be an incinerator built on that site. It's not permitted. They're not likely to get a permit. While we're on the topic of incineration, some people say, why is this not prohibited by your ordinances, or why was this mentioned? And after review, a lot of this was going on at around the same time that you were looking at Francis Farm. And in Francis Farm, there is, we are putting power back on the grid by burning methane. So when we talk about pumping methane and flaring methane and incinerating methane in an attempt to remediate and cure that problem, that is why this was done, from what I can tell, looking back over time. This has nothing to do with building a new incinerator in Haywood County. Although you may wind up with a gas-to-energy project if they, whenever, 50 years from now when they close the White Oak landfill, or whenever it's closed, there may be a similar waste-to-energy type thing that could be done, as is done at Francis Farm. The property cannot be permitted for any type of landfill operations. Actually, I'm going to go back to that, because the other thing that I've heard is about deed restrictions, and Chip may be able to answer the deed restrictions from our conversations regarding the deed restrictions on this property and whether or not the intended use would violate the waste provision on those deed restrictions. And just to confirm from our conversations, if the waste is entirely enclosed in a building, it would not violate the deed. Is that what your opinion is?
That's exactly right. And certainly the deed restrictions and the restrictive covenants for the industrial park will be enforced, and they'll have to comply with those.
So if they were to keep all the waste in the building, there would be no issue on the deed restrictions. What involvement has Mr. Allison had in other counties? This came up a lot. In fact, there's a robocall with a little misinformation going around as we speak. Transylvania. The economic director from Transylvania learned through a biofuel center of North Carolina in April 2010 of a project. The original project appeared to be to turn wood chips into biodiesel. That would include railroad ties and wood chips. This is what they were attempting to do. There was a company from New York, Renewable Developers. They were looking for land, and the economic director was trying to steer them towards Transylvania to try and generate business. He asked them to look at the airport site in Transylvania and the former Acosta site. Ken Allison owned the airport site. At that time, there's no evidence of any ownership interest by Mr. Allison in Renewable Developers, and they sought to purchase the airport site. Over a 2-year period in time, the project goes from where it originally started, the production of biofuels from wood chips and railroad ties, to the production of biofuels from solid waste, to a diesel burning facility to place power back on the grid. During that time period, looking at the different minutes, it appears, because of the way he is referenced, and even looking at the public hearings, that Mr. Allison is the owner of the airport site trying to sell his land at a premium to a company that wants to move in. That's what the paper trail appears to be. Transylvania enacted a moratorium on biomass electricity generating facility using this process and a materials recovery facility, and any facility using municipal solid waste as a feedstock in July 22nd, 2013, and that ended the project. They put a moratorium on the project, and that ended it. That was a county moratorium. Town of Fletcher. Regional Recycling Solutions is formed in May of 2014. And this has to do with the Henderson one because everybody said he's got, there have been 3 rejections. RRS found a site in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the town of Fletcher. They met with town officials but decided not to pursue the site due to limitations to the building site. The town manager stated they did not have any preliminary objections of the proposed enterprise. There's no evidence in the records that we could find in Henderson County that this was ever rejected, RRS or anything else. So the statements that Henderson County was a rejection, I simply have found no evidence of. Buncombe County. They applied for a conditional use permit to Buncombe County Board of Adjustment for a 53-acre tract on Pond Road. The application was denied by the board due to the plans not being approved by Diener, and Diener would not approve without the Buncombe County's approval. This appears to be a catch-22 zoning situation. And that's from looking at the letter that was provided by Buncombe County on why they didn't permit this. So that appears to be, to me, the first time that Regional Recycling Solutions was stopped with a similar design. Not 3, but 1, and here over a zoning issue. Question: will the waste from Regional Recycling Solutions shorten the Haywood County landfill? No, their waste would be taken on to Tennessee. There is a permit in place that does not allow out-of-state waste, and an agreement and a permit that limit the tonnage of waste. So we've heard about the shortening of the landfill life a lot, and again, that's one of those pieces of information that's out there. Diener would have to change the permit, and the Board of Commissioners would have to change the contract to allow more waste. What could this impact if there was in-county waste that was processed or if it was classified as in-county waste? If you don't change the permit and you don't change the contracts, and those things would have to happen, then you're going to be limited with the amount of tonnage. About half of the tonnage that was put in there was put in by a company that spoke at the last time. And that is an incentive for that company to fight vigorously. It's just one incentive, to fight vigorously not to allow this, because although it would not shorten the life of the landfill, we've done a study and Santec has done a study on the life of the landfill, and those are ongoing, and we have engineering reports, so whatever it is from an engineering standpoint, it will be. This project would not shorten the life of the landfill based on the permit, but it theoretically could shorten the amount of tonnage that waste management could place in the landfill if some of this was deemed to be Haywood County waste coming through that stream. However, Mr. Allison has said that he has got a site in Tennessee that will take their waste. Why did the Montgomery, Alabama recycling plant close? According to what's out there in the public press, and we reviewed the Montgomery Advertiser, it was due to a decline in commodity pricing, not to the quality of the product. This was something that people got up here and were saying, and we'll get to who those people were in a minute. The mayor states that 5 or 6 companies have inquired about the possibility of taking control of that facility. So a lot of people say, what about Montgomery, Alabama? If it's not economically viable, then 5 or 6 people are willing to take that gamble. And I would simply say in life, all business is risk. This business is risk. Those 5 or 6 companies are having a risk. The companies that are standing up here and have spoken to oppose this have risk. It's all risk. There are no certainties in business. But if 5 or 6 companies are willing to step forward, according to the mayor in the Montgomery Advertiser, then there's something going on in Alabama that somebody sees as viable. Competitors. Got a question actually on this. Was Pratt Industry a competitor? Because they had a gentleman stand up here from their company and state they were not a competitor. They have 4 plants within a 3-hour drive of Haywood County and a gasifying plant in Conyers, Georgia, to burn the residual byproduct from their production facility. Additionally, I've seen one of their recycling trucks in Henderson County, a front-end loader recycling truck at a commercial business. I cannot say that they are not competitors. They have a broader range. They may not view themselves as competitors because, number one, they're significantly larger in scope, and number two, they may be able to handle paper on the back end. That's accurate information. They can take the processing much further than this plant because they can process pulp and produce it so that it can then be sold directly as pulp to a paper mill. So they have a broader scope of what they do, but they are a competitor. We also have received letters from Waste Management and others who are recycling facilities. I don't know about the specifics. I've not toured Waste Management, but I am familiar with a couple of the recycling facilities because we did business with them, and they don't have bag breakers and sorting equipment and optical scanners, to my knowledge. So a lot of what is going on is a look at technology, and a lot of what you're getting, and I anticipate will get, this is definitely part of the equation. There are competitors out there who are part of the equation. And so if you're looking at it from an economic market standpoint, is there a market? Is it viable? Are there too many competitors? I would ask those questions, but I would not necessarily say that it's completely not a worthwhile venture. It seems to be a much more sophisticated venture than what at least some of these competitors are operating. Regional Recycling Solutions and Stadler have worked together to develop an operational plan for the facility. The answers that I'm about to present are questions that I couldn't answer, but we asked Stadler and Regional Recycling Solutions to provide the answers to the next questions. I'm going to present their answers to you for what they are worth as they came to us. Stadler, and my German is a little rusty, but I think that's Anglican Bow, is dedicated to planning, production, assembling. Stadler is a worldwide company with over 200 plants. They have a history of engineering that, if I'm not mistaken, they said was 2 centuries old. They are one of the oldest in the recycling business in the world and in the production of equipment for the recycling business. They're putting in a plant of over $500 million in Madrid, Spain, with this type of equipment on a much larger scale. According to the engineers that we spoke with from Stadler. 200 recycling facilities. This is a picture of one of their facilities. They do a bag opener, optical separator, ballistic separation. They have a sorting cabin, which is where people would be doing the hand sorting. They do a lot of conveyor belt technology that is designed to operate without getting hung up by the different particles that would be passing through it and the different type of material passing through it. Stadler America also provided us a list of references because we asked for that. Where is your product? When you go down, the one site that start to finish Stadler that I know of is the Ham Waste Disposal in Kansas. It's a single stream sorting and recycling plant. Clear Plath Recycling in Fayetteville uses their PET sorting line for plastics. QRS Recycling in Baltimore has an in-feed line for mixed plastic sorting. But they also have a number of different plants in ballistic separators that they've sold in the United States. What will the standard operating hours be? Asked that question, and Regional Recycling Solutions said they're going to start with 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Who will operate the facility? Mr. Allison has assembled a team with over 100 years in recycling and MRF management. The plant manager will be trained in Germany for 2 months, and Stadler employees will be at the opening of the facility for several weeks to train personnel on the ground. One of the questions that kept coming up is Mr. Allison doesn't have the experience to run this plant. My research indicates that that is correct. However, Mr. Allison has the business experience to allow the Stadler people to train his people how to run this plant. Question: will local people from Haywood County be hired at RRS? Answer: our regional recycling anticipates about 90% of the workforce will come from Haywood County. Why does this facility need a permit? Since a limited amount of waste will come into the facility, a permit is required by North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Being permitted will give better oversight to the operations. Where will the material that is unusable be transported to? A landfill in Tennessee. What processes will be going on in different phases of the project? All proposed facilities will be baling, separating commercial recyclables, processing single-stream materials, and opening bag material. Will there be more waste coming into Haywood County? Yes, but the waste will be transported and shipped to Tennessee. How will the processing protect the paper and cardboard? The 2 fiber cardboard and mixed paper grades will be sorted out separately by a mixture of machinery and manual sorters to provide the final quality control prior to baling and sell to market. For the rest of these questions, with the Stadler at the top, they were actually answered by the engineer that we contacted or were given as a reference with Stadler. Please explain the safety of the machines and operations at the Stadler facilities. The equipment's engineered in keeping European and U.S.-based safety regulations for OSHA and ANSI in mind. Europe is ahead of the United States in terms, and this is their answer, in terms of the USA and safety and health regulations when it comes to MRF to protect people from the person operating these facilities. Components are designed to meet the highest standard for safety in this matter. With a substantial footprint of operating plants from Stadler and the United Kingdom in place, our proof of Stadler's safe equipment is one of the countries with the highest health and safety standards. Next is the heart of the system, which is a ballistic separator, is a much safer piece of equipment to maintain than its U.S. counterpiece, a disc screen separator. With minimum changes of wrapping, there is limited need for personnel to enter the equipment with box cutters to undo wrap material than its counterpart, the disc screen. Its working area inside the machine is at a much lower angle than typical disc screens, and so there's less risk of balance on the that they're going to have to balance on rotating shafts. Got this question about incineration. The European model assumes there is an incineration at the end of the process. Is this a correct assumption? First of all, their answer: incineration is a negative verbiage to be used when referring to waste to energy. There is indeed a substantial waste to energy infrastructure in place in Europe, but the European Union has mandates, regulations in place that require extensive sorting of valuable commodities. The sorting is done by residents at the curb, at collection points, or at the MRFs. Generally, the final residue fraction from these that have limited value are presented as an engineered fuel to existing waste-to-energy facilities or as an alternative fuel for coal-fired plants or cement plants. There will be no incineration at the Haywood County site. And again, the Haywood County site won't have incineration based on the deed restrictions and the covenants which other people, including the adjacent people who bought in that industrial park, could enforce. Please explain the sorting technology that will make the materials marketable after processing. There were a lot of concerns about whether or not this would be a marketable product. The valuable recycling materials are already source separated by the residential and commercial accounts. This mixture of dry materials will be brought to the facility to be processed and separated by type and grade by an efficient sorting process consisting of a proven technology and final manual quality control to ensure a marketable product. In addition to looking at this, I've made some phone calls and asked, is there a market for the paper if it got wet or it got dirty or it got mixed in? And the answer to that question is not much of one. It significantly does lower the price. However, it is not completely unsaleable, as was discussed previously. If they can get it sorted enough, some contamination, it just simply is a price-lowering matter. Is there a chance of mercury light bulbs or other hazardous material can contaminate material in surrounding area, particularly leaking through the floor? This question got asked of us about hazardous materials. The answer that they gave us is materials brought and processed at the facility pass various stages of visual inspection for contamination that could harm the safety of the workers and the marketability of the commodities. It starts with a visual inspection of the loads received from the trucks dumped on the tipping floor. After that, there's a grapple operator who's feeding material and has the ability to screen and remove contamination. Also, very early in the process stage, manual sorters along the pre-sort conveyor have the ability to remove contamination, including hazardous materials. Although the waste stream will be dry and heavily source separated, safety protocols will be in place to handle hazardous materials appropriately if they make it to the facility. In case of hazardous materials found, regional recycling would work with the city or county to properly educate the residents. Education of haulers and citizens will be a major emphasis of regional recycling. We asked, did you design the Lawrence, Kansas facility, and if so, how is it operating? Yes, Stadler designed the facility, and our staff was instrumental to its final design and layout. Lawrence, Kansas has a facility that has very recently been put in place. It actually would be a bit smaller than the facility we are looking at here in terms of volume, but it is start to finish a Stadler product inside. To my knowledge, that's what they have told us in conversations. The customer is very happy from an operational perspective with the equipment and its high operating uptime. One of the key reasons for the customer to select Stadler is for the safe maintainability of the ballistic separator and the minimum leakage points of various transitions between conveyors and other equipment. This latter is keeping the working environment clean and minimizes tripping or slipping hazards. Again, the answer on this one came from the engineer who's working with Stadler. Please confirm the number of people needed to operate the proposed facility in here in Haywood County. And we asked this question of Stadler. They said RRS is planning to employ 28 to 32 to operate the Haywood County MRF. The labor skills applicable range from manual sorters on the line to office staff to support daily operations. And that's in the initial phase 1 build out. Got a question as to why different number of employees were listed in Buncombe and in Haywood, and it had to do with there is a slight difference in engineering design between Buncombe and Haywood, and more people will be in the sorting at the pre-sort level, and that was something that was learned from Lawrence, Kansas, that you're going to need more people on the pre-sort level to get better quality, and that's a difference in jobs between Buncombe and Haywood, because somebody asked why more jobs here. The other is logistics. They're talking about adding a logistics facility in Haywood, but one of the main ones is, I think it was 8 jobs related to pre-sort are in the design of the Haywood plant that were not in the design of the Buncombe plant, and there are also more ballistic separators in the design in the Haywood plant, which would require maintenance. So those of the questions that were asked at the last meeting, those were the answers that in the past few weeks we were able to work through and come up with. I have no other answers. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Anyone have any questions of Ira before we move to the public comment? Okay, again, it'll be the same procedure as at the last public hearing. Speakers are requested to limit their comments to 3 minutes. There'll be a light up here that will give you ample warning. I would really appreciate it if there are no outbursts from the audience. We're all residents of Haywood County, and I think we need to be civil to each other. And you know, we're trying to get information, and just like you are, and to yell at us or call us names or to insult speakers is not really productive, and it really is beneath the dignity that Haywood County citizens deserve toward each other, in my view. So we'll begin with Mark Carell. And if you spoke at the last public hearing, if you've got nothing new to add, you know, I'm not going to tell you can't speak, but, you know, let's try to give those who have not had the opportunity to speak the opportunity to do so. Mr. Carell.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a vested interest in regional recycling moving into my area, with probably the exception of maybe half a dozen people. My home is the closest, as the crow flies, about 500 feet from the proposed facility. Mr. Dove spoke about many of the deed restrictions. I also looked at the deed restrictions and pulled out some definitions. I think you kind of have to look at the entire, not just the restrictions, but also some of the other definitions that are addressed in the deed restrictions and in the deed itself. On the recitals in paragraph 2, the declarant, which is Haywood County, desires to impose upon the buyers, the businesses within the industrial park, a mutual and beneficial restrictions, covenants, and equitable servitudes and charges under the general plan of the scheme of improvements for the benefit of all lots and parcels in the development and for the owners thereof. So it's not just one business, it's all the businesses, and I'm sure, you know, they would be impacted by this business. Under definitions, paragraph F, industrial means manufacturing, assembly, and/or warehousing. I don't think that garbage sorting, garbage handling fits that definition, in my opinion. Under the restrictions clause, paragraph E, it states that no noxious, offensive, or illegal activities or nuisances shall be permitted on any lot. In paragraph G, it also states that no owner shall accumulate any form of junk, inoperable vehicles, litter, refuse, or garbage. It does not state whether that's indoors or outdoors. Paragraph K also states that no industrial waste shall be stored on the premises. The premises shall not be used as a landfill. I don't know how you can operate a business that's primarily garbage related or waste related without storing it on the premises in some shape or manner. Under section 3, under the development standards and requirements, paragraph B, no use will be made of any lot which shall constitute a nuisance or cause emission of wastewater discharges, noxious odors, liquids, gases, dust, fumes or smoke, or other cause noises of other conditions which might injure the reputation of the lot or the neighboring properties. And I My assumption is the neighboring properties also includes the residents, the homes, many of which have been there far before the industrial park was open. So it just seems to me that when this industrial park was put together, that there was a big intent on the commissioner at the time, the commissioners, to make sure that what businesses were located there did not harm the area or the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Brookshire. Kelly Brookshire.
Hello, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak today. I think what the gentleman before me said pretty much sums it up for the community. And we understand that being on the Board of Commissioners can be demanding, and you want to do what's best for your community. But you don't have to make this decision on your own. The purpose of holding these hearings is to discuss the issue and allow the community the opportunity to persuade you to make the right decision. And I think this community has spoken up, and we do not approve of this deal. And it's okay. It's okay to present an idea that doesn't succeed. We respect you for trying to bring jobs into this county. But the environmental and health risk, along with lower property values, and to us, it is a traffic problem also, these outweigh the pros in this case. And the community is putting their trust in you to turn down this deal with Mr. Allison, just as others have done. And we will respect you for investigating other options and opportunities, such as those offered by Dr. Harley. But I know we can do better and bring in a company and jobs to our community that we can be proud of. And I've done the math on the salary offered at $30,000 a year to a family of 4 that has to support their children with one parent working. These can still be poverty line wages. These workers at poverty line wages, they may not want to work with trash. And they might have a huge turnover of employees. So huge that nobody from this county may not want to work there. We want to have pride in our county and our towns. Beaver Dam is beautiful, and we want it to stay beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul DuPont.
What's his name?
Paul DuPont. D-U-P-O-N-T, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I thank the board for giving me the opportunity to speak of my concerns. I live in the glade at the top of Beaver Dam Road. I'm concerned about the certainty that a number of the semis headed to the recycle center will miss the turn and continue up Beaver Dam Road until they get stuck up on the mountain at one of the switchbacks. This has occurred dozens of times in the past with trucks heading to the industrial park and has continued even after the additional sign at the entrance. No signage can seem to stop these trucks from missing that turn. This will be much worse with many more trucks going to the park. It generally takes 2 or more hours to get these trucks off the mountain. When Beaver Dam Road is blocked, people at the top of the mountain can't get to Canton, and emergency vehicles can't get to them, creating a dangerous situation. And these additional trucks will be carrying waste containing unknown hazardous material. If one of these trucks overturns, we could have a real disaster. Beaver Dam Creek runs next to the road at some of the points that trucks have gotten stuck in the past. If one of these trucks overturns at any of these points, there is a real chance its potentially toxic load will go into the creek. Don't let this disaster be the legacy of this board. Thank you.
Dustin Cornelson. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Oh, that's okay. I'm used to it.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Dustin Corneliuson, and I'm a resident of Beaver Dam that has a sustainable organic farm as well as a sustainability-based small business. I'm a father of a 2-year-old, and I'd like to thank you guys for letting me speak up here. It hurts me to stand up here and oppose a recycling facility, but I don't think that this business is good for the county. Mr. Allison has presented Haywood with his 4th bad business plan and doesn't seem to give an honest or accurate story. Of course, you covered the job numbers and the truck numbers pretty well, so we understand that that's constantly changing. And you are not supposed to, well, we've covered the tax incentives. You know exactly what you need to do there. This business seems just about getting tax credits for his investors and then selling off the property at a higher price to someone who has the county has no agreements with. They can do whatever they want at that point. This is not an environmental or sustainable industry, as everything is suggested. Mr. Allison is doing the bare minimums required by law and refuses to meet with the residents to back up his claims and assure us that there is nothing to worry about. These are not real lasting jobs for Haywood County. He was not telling the truth about what transpired in Transylvania, so why would anything he says about the future be true? All you have to do is look at all the past newspaper articles that covered, and you can catch Mr. Allison changing stance many times. The county, said no incineration, but said that it would be open to energy generation from the waste, which is pretty much the same. Gasification, which you said no, but you have not mentioned anything about pyrolysis. Has the same health risk as incineration. Can you guarantee that this will not be an option as well? And what are you going to do from changing the permit? Permits can be changed and have been changed many times. Once this has died down, it'd be pretty simple to change, or if it was bought by somebody else. Those are my main concerns at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike Shook. I've been asked to remind folks to speak into the microphone so that everything is
Okay.
transmitted clearly. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to start with information from ComEd. They have 470 employees and growing, average of 30 transfer trucks daily. Plus Laundry has 70 employees and have 9 boxcars and 1 transfer truck, which are in and out all day. This information comes from the NC North Carolina DOT Traffic Volume Match 2014. Vehicles, North Canton has an average of 2,300 vehicles daily. Beaver Dam Road average is 2,400, with the recycle center added 3 in and 3 out per hour. That's a transfer truck about every 7 or 8 minutes. At the last meeting, I heard the statement that you could not think of Beaver Dam community alone. That you had to think of the whole county. In my thoughts, I would hope that you would be concerned of the environmental impact of any community in our county. The traffic issue is just one of many concerns we have about this project. We are not opposed of a new business, but please be selective of what you put in the middle of a community of over 600 people. Thank you.
Thank you. Bennett Hips.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank you.
listening to me today. I just got a short thing. I've lived in Haywood County all my life, 56 years old, and I do live on Beaver Dam. I noticed the panel. I don't see faces on the panel on Beaver Dam. With that being said, I think we've got to be smart about the decisions we make, and we don't need to forget the county we come from and as beautiful as it is, every drop of water runs out of Haywood County. It don't run into Haywood County. So we've got one of the finest natural resources in the state of Western North Carolina. It feeds 4 or 5 states. We don't, in my opinion, do not take the risk with this water resource. We can find, as they stated before, something else viable for the county. This is not one of them. A project like this needs to be put out of a community at a distance. If you've noticed in other states, they're not close to communities where it impacts that community and they can control it better. So keep that in mind as you make that decision. Beaver Dam and Haywood County don't need any more waste in this county. Thank you.
Jeffrey Powell.
Take my glasses off so I can see. That's what I have to do. So, there's a man named Sun Tzu that wrote a treatise one time on war called The Art of War, and he said that the ability to gain victory by changing and adapting according to the opponent is called genius. And I commend you. I don't know who you are, but I commend you for one of the greatest what-if presentations I've ever witnessed in this place. But so now there is a tax exemption, is what you're telling us. We didn't know about it before, but there is a tax exemption now. Is that correct? Okay. And I appreciate the apology. It was well-meaning, but there's not going to be the tax revenue that you previously tried to lead the citizens to believe, which is a gross misleading and misrepresentation. So we'll get an additional $288,000 more in purchase price, but lose $100,000 or so a year in tax revenue, correct? And according to what you told us last time, there's $100,000 in tax revenue, right? Right?
But you're making public comments. Go ahead. We're not going to get into a debate.
You did
We're
last
listening.
time you answered the
We're
question.
listening.
But okay, so that's $1 million in 10 years we're going to lose in tax revenue if we bring this business in. So that $288,000 will run out in less than 3 years. So then we start losing $100,000 a year in tax revenue. So where are we going to get that money from? Where's the makeup going to be? And if you knew that already existed, what the tax revenue or the tax incentives existed, why did you not tell us about that before? Why did you say you didn't know about it? Why did he say he was not going to file for
Mr.
it?
Chairman, I'll take full responsibility for that. I presented the information to the board.
But it was still presented to the public and as a misrepresentation.
It was a mistake, yes, and I apologize
Right.
for that.
Which I've already filed with the North Carolina Department of Justice a complaint against that.
Okay.
Mr. Allison, your business model and numbers have changed from county to county, and I appreciate your ability to adapt as well in order to get your project through. But there's too many what-ifs. There's too many not sure on what this number is going to be, changing and adapting and doing all those things. There's really no proven firm answers on this. The facility in Kansas, I appreciate your information on it, but it's not been in existence long enough in this type of recycling process to even know what the long-range terms or effects are going to be on that. We don't know. Those are other what-ifs we have to take into consideration. Also, if 90%, proposed 90% of the employees will be from Haywood County, is that not job discrimination to say if 90% of our applicants are not from Haywood County, they can't be employed by this plant? Is there not laws against that in employment? I think there are. So you can say that, and you also said these people you can't say that they are competitors, but then you went on to say that this company you were quoting was a competitor. So you said two things different that came out of your mouth. You said you can't say they are competitors, but yet you went on to say a minute and a half later, yes, they are competitors. Those are questions. There's what ifs. Get your facts straight and your story straight, and let's not make a rash decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy Powell.
The delivery in favor of the dump at the beginning of this meeting presented a lot of what-ifs and guesses. He himself said it's a risk. He didn't say how big of a risk. The multitude of questions he covered regarding safety, again answered with guesses and what-ifs. I lost count, there were so many questions. is 100% proof it's too risky. He referred to the Kansas plant, which hasn't been in operation long enough to be considered an example of any kind. Why is this admitted very risky, nasty trash business being so rabidly pursued for so few jobs and no tax money? Why is obvious, pertinent research and information being ignored by the commissioners? Most of what has been reported in favor of this dump hasn't and can't be proven. This is a pig in a poke. Something is fishy, and to a common sense public, sirs, that dog won't hunt. I heard someone say that the commissioners will do whatever they want to do. This is the perception of your board. You have seemingly ignored a very large, very passionate, tax-paying, registered voting, law-abiding group of citizens and pushed us into a corner we cannot get out of. Many feel our very homeland is being attacked. This issue has brought people together from every political party and diverse group. You've managed to replicate the unity that I've only seen once in my lifetime. It was in the late 80s or early 90s, and it was a different kind of dump, but it was still a dump. This feels exactly the same. The passion is the same. This has to stop. So with our hearts on our sleeves and tears in our eyes, we come to you again. We have had to agonize, lose sleep, and even take off work to come here and to plead with you, even to the point of begging at times, for you to hear us and protect our property and our heritage. I implore you to put aside whatever unproven or personal agendas, or as many have hinted at, even possible personal financial gain. You have, and as Transylvania, Henderson, and Buncombe County leaders have already done, please just do your job. To you, our leaders that many here believed in and voted for, we say emphatically, if you arrogantly go forward in this travesty of justice, you may think it will be over, but we promise you beyond any doubt it will not be over. Many here, including my family, have already consulted lawyers, federal and state representatives for counsel and advice. If you do not hear us now, you will hear us later. It will be an issue you will have to deal with. Lawsuits, memorandums, filings of violations of restrictions, and public trust which are worthy of investigation by the North Carolina Department of Justice. Anything and everything that can possibly be done will be done. Your least concern will be re-election. Personally, I believe that will be a given.
I'm sorry, but your time is up. Thank you. Barbara Wilkins. Barbara Wilkins.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Allison said he studied the recycling business for a couple of years, came upon this European state-of-the-art machinery, and now he's ready to open a business. Really? Think about that. In your own current or former professions, if someone came to you in that manner, wouldn't you like some evidence of proficiency? A piece of paper that says a course of study has been completed, or a resume that shows a strong job history in the industry? If, for example, the former CEO of Waste Management came and said, I've left the company, I'm starting my own business with this new technology, that would be credibility. Oh, but wait, that really wouldn't happen because, as we learned 2 weeks ago, our geographical area doesn't have the population density to justify this huge bit of machinery. So let's view Mr. Allison for what he is. He's a salesman with a simple PowerPoint presentation trying to put together a deal for his New York, New Jersey investors. We know that Mr. Allison's failed Transylvania incinerator deal boiled down to tax credits for investors. Well, think about all those financial deals we hear about. Limited partnerships, venture capital groups, tax losses to offset tax gains, tax credits, all those legal maneuvers for people choosing to invest in a scheme like this one. Why should Haywood County be used as an enabler so a bunch of East Coast folks can do some creative accounting on their tax returns? RSS has no intention of being here for the long haul. Commissioners, if you approve this sale and the plant gets built, eventually it will get sold, probably sooner than later, and it will be out of anyone's control. This other company, whoever it is, will need to justify the capacity of the machinery by hauling in waste from such a wide geographical area that garbage trucks will be rolling through all of Haywood County all day long, all heading to Beaver Dam. Indeed, Haywood County will become the trash county of North Carolina. You guys are smarter than that. Don't let the sale of this land be your legacy as a commissioner. You have enough facts to see through this plan, recognize it for what it is, and send Mr. Allison on his way.
Larry Wilkins. Larry Wilkins.
The commissioners have mentioned several times during this process that the Beaver Dam site has been for sale since 2008 with no takers. When the county flattened the mountain in 2008 to create the 10-acre shovel-ready site, it was done at a cost of $750,000. Those of us in the community thought the timing was more than questionable. The general economy was almost at a standstill, and most of the news was about companies laying off workers and tightening their belts. No one was building, let alone hiring. If you recall, it stayed that way for several years. It has only been recently that we have seen our economy rebounding. Now we hear that new businesses are coming into Western North Carolina, and we see other cities and we see other sites under construction here and there. I read that the Beaver Dam site is listed for sale on the county website. Is that the entire marketing plan? Couldn't the county be more aggressive about letting the people know that it is available? Like maybe advertise it? We have always known that the industrial park would have another tenant. We assumed that the commissioners would approve the sale to a business that was sound, offered good-paying jobs, and would be a company that we could be proud of having in our community, and that the deal would be in the taxpayers' favor. Trash collection is not the answer. This business is not sound, the wages are not good, and we cannot be proud to have it in our community. We can do better. We don't need to rush into selling this land.
Caroline McLean. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, and members of the public. My name is Caroline McLean, and I'm with the firm of Ward & Smith, and we represent a group of property owners in Haywood County. We're here today to speak in opposition to RRS's and the county's argument that this project is justified based on economic development incentives. First, this violates Chapter 153A of the general statutes, which requires that for property worth more than $30,000, for the county to sell it, it needs to sell it through a notice and bid process and not a private sale, and for full and fair consideration. It's unclear even if the county does sell it for $780,000, that is full fair market value for the property, and there's no added value because this isn't going to increase the longevity of the current landfill because they process different kinds of waste. Secondly, this property is not going to generate tax revenue. It's not going to generate millions in annual wages. If you, even assuming that it does generate 32 jobs, if you multiply that by the annual wages that were represented at the last meeting, that only generates a little over $900,000 each year in wages, not $1.5 million. So already you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars less in wages per year. And RRS is not going to pay property taxes on this project because when it gets a permit from Diener for operating a recycling facility, it's automatically excluded from tax pursuant to statute. Lastly, the project restrictions violate Chapter 158 of the general statutes, which require that for economic incentives like this, among other things, the project has to create a substantial number of jobs that pay at or above median or average wage, and there's been no such showing that's going to happen. This, at best, will generate a few jobs. only 90% of, I think, 32 jobs based on the figures today, and there's no estimated tax revenue. And the annual wages are just at the median for the county. The county is also, pursuant to this chapter, required to contractually bind RRS to make good on its promises within 5 years or give the land back, and this proposal doesn't do that. It gives RRS 7 years to complete the project and only asks for $165,000 back if it doesn't make good on the promise. For these reasons, we oppose the project and respectfully ask that you vote against it and seek bids if you want to sell this property. Thank you.
Chip?
Just want to assure everyone that the agreement is still being negotiated. There's no final agreement yet as to what the details will be.
Peter Watkinson.
Good morning. During our previous hearing, it was clearly demonstrated that there is no value added to either the Beaver Dam community nor to Haywood County by the Regional Recycling Solutions proposal that justifies its acceptance. To reiterate just a few of these points, there is not significant job creation for Haywood County with respect to the number of employees at any of the phases, including completion of the RRS project, to warrant such a venture. The RRS proposal is neither what Haywood County taxpayers and voters desire, nor is it how the Haywood County citizens wish to have their tax dollars spent. The alleged advantages put forth by RRS are excellent examples of egregious misrepresentation of facts. First, to quote from How to Lie with Statistics by Darrell Huff, the use of the unqualified word average, for example, to quote RRS, 30 employees with average salaries of $29,000. This is $13.89 an hour, or less than the proposed minimum wage by several states. Another example, what the British author Stephen Potter calls the okay name, such as anything smacking of the medical profession is an okay name. Scientific laboratories have okay names, so do colleges. To quote RRS, the theory, backed by some number crunching by a Western Carolina University economics professor, is just that, an unproven theory. On the things you see reported, you will be able to tell there just aren't enough solid examples of anything. It is this absence of complete, unbiased information that takes away any credibility from their proposed project. Again, from How to Lie with Statistics, citing 100 years experience. That's great. I realize it's not one person with 100 years experience, but is it 4 people? Is it 25? That's an erroneous, again, egregious example of how to lie with statistics. The statement by RRS, we are really impressed with the site. It's absolutely beautiful. Hogwash, Boulder Dash, and malarkey. To obtain 55.8 acres when no more than 10 acres is needed indicates there is much amiss and we're not being told everything. What will happen to the excess 45.8 acres? Why buy land you don't intend to use? What is the hidden agenda? Last, but certainly not least, is still the traffic question. Will the county be using eminent domain to acquire additional land in order to have an interchange built, thereby creating an exit 32 on Interstate 40, causing some the loss of their property and others significant decrease in property values? Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Wadham.
I thank you for allowing us to come today to speak to you. You know, I'd like to remind you that our forefathers put their signatures online in the Declaration of Independence. Many of them lost their lives for doing that. Many of them lost their finances and everything else. Are you willing to put your finances on the line to guarantee this is not going to be a real problem for Haywood County in the future? Now, we have turned around in Haywood County and thought we were trying to develop this county something similar to Gatlinburg at one time. Then we turned around and figured out we were going to turn around and use it to try to work with the elderly people coming in here. Why would they want to come here if it's going to be known as the trash center of Western North Carolina? One thing that hasn't been mentioned today is you have all these trucks coming in, but you also have trucks going out to Tennessee. Now, what happens if Tennessee decides they don't want the trucks from North Carolina coming in? What are you going to do with that trash then? Have you thought about that? That's a real possibility, folks. You know, in every landfill that we've had problems with it. We're paying penalties to the state of North Carolina for one because of problems that we have with the landfill now, the one we moved out of. It's time that we turn around and start thinking of Haywood County. Because what will wind up happening is if it gets canceled, our landfill will be filled with this material. Our landfill was paid for by Haywood County citizens. We don't want to turn around and bring this trash in from every other county and fill it in when we are the ones that paid for it. It's supposed to last 40 years. It's not going to last 10 years if 25 tons comes into it an hour. There's no way. Now let's use some common sense. Look at what could happen. We could have a disastrous situation. We really could. Are you willing to put your name on the line to guarantee we're not going to have problems? Are you really? Are you willing to put your homes on the line like our original forefathers signed? I ask you to think twice on this. Let's do the job you're supposed to be, that you were elected to do. Let's do it. Thank you.
Margaret King. If everybody could turn their cell phones off, it'd probably be considerate for the one sitting next to you.
My name is Margaret King, and I was born on Beaver Dam. I don't live there now, but my children, most of them live there, and my friends. And I'm asking you, I'm begging you not to put this thing on Beaver Dam because it's such a beautiful place. I love Beaver Dam. I own some land up there. And I just think if y'all do this, you're going to be hated the rest of your life. And I don't think you want that. I wouldn't.
Al Goodis.
My name is Al Goodis, and I moved here in 2002. I'm a permanent resident, and I live in Plot Creek. I am a taxpayer, and Haywood County is a beautiful place. Let's keep it that way. I didn't move here for a garbage dump. This is a nice tourist area, and you think that people were going to come here because of the reputation that it's a garbage receiver? You're taking in people, the garbage from other states. We don't have enough of our own. Why don't we ship it out to somebody else? This is wrong. It's just wrong. Please, you know, I'm just amazed at the silliness of this whole idea. Thank you.
Jeremy Davis. Good to see you again.
How are you? It's good to see everybody here. We've got folks from Maggie Valley, Beaver Dam, Sawnook. I'm from Bethel. I see Crusoe. This is really a county issue, and I hope you guys are paying attention to the broad bunch that's here. At the last meeting here, I'm just going to address the tonnage limits and I'm responsible for the outburst that everybody got lectured for, so I apologize for you having to get lectured. I meant no disrespect, but I have copies of the Santec leases provided by Ira Dove and by Diener, and Tracy Coward was given a comment at the last meeting where we've got conflicting information. David Francis, Solid Waste Management, said to the Smoky Mountain News that it was very probable that this waste that was left over from the recycling facility would go to our landfill. Commissioner Swanger said no, that wouldn't happen, and then there was some reference to daily cap limits. My issue with that, when I said no, that's not true, was the Second Amendment Sanitary Landfill Agreement, Section 513, which was signed by Commissioner Swanger, Inslee, David Francis, the Solid Waste Manager, and County Manager Ira Dove, specifically states that the tonnage limits were removed in its entirety from the Santec lease, and there are no tonnage limits in those leases as it sits now. From my perspective, if we're getting misinformation on that or misfactual information, what else are we getting misinformation about from the people, Ira Dove, Mark Swanger, Kevin Inslee, David Francis, who hasn't spoken on this that I've heard. But, you know, for every cockroach we see, there's 50 that we don't. And that's my concern. Nobody in this county that I've talked to, there's a few folks that have written some letters to the Mountaineer, but I'm yet to find one living, breathing person that I've talked to face that supports this agreement and or this arrangement or proposal. And I hope you guys keep that in mind. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer
Yes,
the tonnage
Mr. Dove,
thing.
go ahead.
There is a permit with Diener that allows for 142,000 tons of garbage to come into the landfill. And that permit has a plus or minus 10% hold on it, which means that there is actually a cap, and that amendment did not take away the annual cap, and that's a fiscal year July to July cap on the amount of tonnage that can go into the landfill. What the amendment did do is the way that it was previously written, it had a daily cap, meaning that there would be so many tons per day that would be allowed. And that was taken away, but it allowed for the annual cap was not rescinded. The permit has not been changed. You can go to Diener and check. And last year the permit was enforced because the out-of-county waste that was being taken was had to be limited for the last 3 months. There is a permit cap on our landfill and how much waste can be there. And we are doing a study to see how long the landfill will last. An engineering firm has been hired. Santec did a study. They said, and they came here last summer, and I'm off the top of my head, I cannot remember the exact amount of years, but it was sufficient to get through.
30.1 years.
Yes, that's what Santec said. And we hired an independent engineering firm and did another flyover to look at that. We don't have that information completely back on how long the landfill will last. But it is absolutely incorrect to say that there's no cap on the landfill.
Just the daily limit was removed.
The daily limit was removed.
Okay, but not the annual.
But not the annual.
Okay.
The permit limit was not. And there was a difference between the contract and the permit because Diener looks at the annual amount of trash.
Right. Okay. Okay, Nicole Harley.
In those folders are emails from concerned citizens, and if possible, we would like those put in the minutes from this meeting. My name is Nicole Harley, and I live in Beaver Dam. And at the October 5th meeting, Ken Allison said that he would be glad to meet with the people in the community and answer any questions about the 55-acre waste dump he plans to put in Beaver Dam. Allison was invited to our October 13th meeting and again at an October 26th meeting held at the Beaver Dam Community Center. He did not attend either meeting. However, he did offer to meet with the community Saturday, October the 31st, Halloween, but never gave us a time. He sent an email on the 31st, the day of the meeting, and said he just returned from travels and had an emergency at his nursery company, so he canceled the meeting. All those emails are available in the notebook for you. Also, Allison's truck numbers are way off. He did a truck study in Buncombe County, and from that study, we found that from this site could be generating as many as 270 truck trips per day. Regional Recycling Solution has no existing facilities or operations, 0 employees, and a website with virtually no information made using a free template. They have no phone number listed, and the address of 1 Summerwind Drive doesn't even exist. So basically, we have a man with 0 experience who wants to build a $24 million facility in Beaver Dam. What if this facility were close to your home? Would you want your children living close to this garbage dump? If you put this in, you will be forcing me and my family to leave our home. I will not raise my children in an environment that is a health risk and safety hazard that this will bring due to you turning Beaver Dam into a waste community. Additionally, I would like to see a copy of the agreement between RRS and Haywood County. I feel like this whole project may be unconstitutional. Lastly, Section 1 of the North Carolina State Constitution says, and we hold it to be self-evident, that all persons are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, the enjoyment of the fruits of their own labor, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. David Harley. David Harley.
Good morning.
Morning.
I am David Harley. I'm a physician in Asheville. I'm a native of Haywood County from the age of 2. And I own both residential and commercial property in Beaver Dam. I have a vested interest in this community, and I live less than a mile from the proposed site. As a physician, I want to voice my concerns over the health risks of this project. Please be aware that there are very grave health risks involved here. You can read the studies for yourselves. I have enclosed an email in the packet to the commissioners referencing just a few of them. A project like this does not belong in a community where human beings live. I am also speaking to reiterate my offer to purchase the 55-acre tract under discussion. The offer is still on the table. Kirk, I appreciate your response to my email. But I still haven't heard back from the 2 individuals you mentioned would be contacting me. I would appreciate some feedback from them on this so that I can either move forward or move on. Again, I am willing to buy the proposed tract for $500,000. Our business plan is to market the property heavily throughout western North Carolina and build industrial buildings to suit the businesses. Our goal is 4 to 5 jobs per acre, per graded acre. We are not eligible, nor will we be seeking any tax exemptions. Even if you don't take me up on this offer, I hope you will realize that this land, which belongs to the taxpayers of Haywood County, is extremely valuable. We should wait until the best option becomes available, and even if it is not my own offer, I think Haywood County can do better than just more garbage. Thank you for your consideration.
Debbie King.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Debbie King. I live in Beaver Dam. I'd like to know where the funding is coming from for Ken Allison and RRS. As we've heard, RRS will not pay property tax, while another buyer could add to the property tax base. We have heard from realtors who have said that every property owner in the county could be affected by this waste. This will be taken away from the fruit of our labors. And what about tourism? I don't know too many people that say, hey, let's vacation where all that waste is coming in. And was phase 2 and 3 in the presentation this morning? That's a question we're all asking. What's going on in phase 2 and 3? And is a traffic study required specifically for a waste transfer station? I believe the following. Many of the property owners in Beaver Dam have wells. We currently import waste from 17 other counties. Hauling waste from South Carolina, Tennessee, and who knows where else into a well-established community does not benefit the public. It will benefit only a select few at the expense of many. There is nothing good that can come from a washdown in a waste plant on a mountain where the waste is processed. And nothing good about the thousands of people that live in this valley that have to drive or ride on this 2-lane road with waste truck hauling in who knows what kind of waste. And there is nothing good about importing more waste into our county. Lawrence, Kansas, that facility, to my understanding, is 10 tons per hour. Beaver Dam, we're talking about 25 tons. Kansas, it's pre-sorted. Beaver Dam, we're talking about a dirty MRF. So my question, rumor has it that somebody went and visited the facility. Is this right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of a neighborhood, like what you're wanting to do to us in Beaver Dam? And is there one way out on a 2-lane road in bad inclement weather? And the most important thing to me, as a mom and as a grandmother, and you've heard from my daughter, is the potential health, risk, and safety hazards, lower property values, and harm to the character of our community that could come to the thousands of people that live in this valley, including all of my children, my grandchildren, a multitude of friends, and family members that call Beaver Dam home. You are asking us to pay a high price for a few jobs that will benefit only a few. I ask that you vote no to RRS buying this land in Beaver Dam for a recycling center. You did take an oath. Nicole already quoted that oath, and we do have the right to enjoy the fruit of our own labors. If you choose to bring this waste into Beaver Dam, I personally believe that you will be taking something from many of us in Beaver Dam that is not yours to take. Thank you.
Thank you. It's not a rumor that 2 commissioners visited Lawrence, Kansas. That in fact did occur late last week. Commissioners Inslee and Sorrells went to see for themselves. They're preparing a written report for the other commissioners, which will be a public document when completed. So, okay. Barry Bailey.
I'm Barry Bailey. I live in Buncombe County. My 89-year-old mother lives on Beaver Dam Road below the industrial park. Due to the limited time, I want to address the restrictions put on the property in question by Johnny Reno as recorded on a general warranty deed in Book 412, page 690, which reads in part, "These premises are conveyed subject to the following terms, conditions, and restrictions which shall run with the land in perpetuity." Then skipping to restriction number 2, no portion of subject property may be used or maintained as a dumping ground for rubbish, trash, or garbage, and no trash shall be kept upon the property except in sanitary containers. So, how might these restrictions be violated? Well, a court may decide that the restrictions are violated simply on the face of the project. There is no doubt that RRS will be dumping trash on the site and maintaining a dumping ground and keeping trash on the site. Do the RRS buildings qualify as a sanitary container? What happens when the RRS process breaks down because of equipment failure, or loss of a facility to dump non-recyclables, or loss of a customer to buy recyclables, or the collapse of the price of a recyclable to the point where RRS simply doesn't want to sell? The system backs up and the overflow has to be stored somewhere. Is a trailer a sanitary container? There is no storage facility in this site plan. So what happens when everything doesn't work exactly as planned? RRS can come to the board and request a variance to the restrictions imposed by the industrial park, and they'll probably get it approved. But we have these Reno restrictions on the property. Was the cost of possible litigation considered in the economic impact study by Western Carolina University? Interaction with the public on this project has been horrendous, something akin to kicking a hornet's nest. I think you can expect a high level of public awareness going forward. I know you guys deal with a few gadflies that are always in your face complaining about everything and anything coming and going. This situation's different. I have never taken any kind of political action except for voting in my entire life. In truth, I wasn't sure if I opposed this project or not when I first heard about it. But when I started digging into the details, it very quickly became apparent that this is not a good financial deal for the taxpayers of this county, and the business plan provides more questions than answers. I asked the board to explain in detail how the Reno restrictions affect this project before proceeding to a vote. Thank you.
Pam Bailey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Pam Bailey, and I live in Buncombe County. Until about a year ago, I spent my entire life in Haywood County and 3 generations of my family before me. My daughter's family lives on Beaver Dam now with 5 of my grandchildren, so I am definitely a stakeholder in this issue. I have many concerns about this project, but due to the limited time, I'm going to focus on the thus far vague definitions of phases 2 and 3. Both in the RRS presentation and the lack of detail furnished or maybe even known by the board. Mostly what I've seen is a sales pitch, and I am not interested in being sold. I just want to understand. This project has been broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1 has a fair amount of detail, but phases 2 and 3 have only been defined through implication and assumption. On the site plan, the shape of the buildings are similar, which implies and makes one assume that phases 2 and 3 are replications of phase 1. But we all know what happens when you assume. That's very dangerous. And after the ink dries, we're all going to be pretty much stuck with whatever RRS decides to do. One aspect of this deal that's always bothered me is the fact that they needed 55 acres. That's a lot of property. And once the ink dries, what if there is a phase 4? Do we really know? Mr. Allison was willing to sell his land in Transylvania County to a company that was eventually going to do pyrolysis, which is another word for incineration. Why should we trust him? Mr. Chairman, I've watched you shake your head no every time somebody's brought up incineration. But then I hear warnings from people who've been on this battlefield before that incineration's not always called incineration. To paraphrase Bill Clinton, what exactly is incineration? Is it the heating of plastics in a closed, low-oxygen environment? Is that incineration? Is gasification incineration? What about pyrolysis? Is that incineration? Carbonization? Is the thermochemical decomposition of organic material at elevated temperatures incineration? Or is phase 4 simply a rose by any other name? I've done a bit of research, and it seems that no matter what you call it, all these technologies are incineration-based, and they're all harmful to the environment. I asked the board to explain in detail what is phases 2 and 3 and clearly define incineration. Let me be clear, we are not against viable industry for Beaver Dam. We understand that the land in question is zoned for industrial use. We are against Mr. Allison's business in any area of Haywood County. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to have to take a short recess for the recording devices to be updated, so about 4 or 5 minutes.